we've talked about our favorite moments, but I do want to talk about the moments that didn't work for us. And one of them for me, as much as I appreciated it, was how quickly Rey knew how to do everything that, as you said, it took Luke 3 movies to do. It just, she didn't have training, she didn't have Yoda, you know, that we know of speaking in her ear saying this is how you do it. She just knew she could do a Jedi mind trick, and you know.
Do you know how high her midichlorian count is?
You know, I cannot wait until we find out. I'm one of the
it was gonna break that little meter that Qui-Gon had.
I do hope that when we find out more about Rey and her origin, which I think is inevitable, you know, whether she is Luke's child, which I hope isn't
not.
the case. I think it's very easy to do it that way. I honestly hope that her parentage isn't that important. But I think when we do find out more about her, I want it to be explained why that came so easily to her. Whether it's this theory that Rebel Base is probably going to get into more, or whether it's just that she is so incredibly powerful with the Force that it does come naturally.
Yeah, because you know him, that moment that we keep talking about, because it's a great moment of her pulling that lightsaber out of the snow. Another visual callback to Empire Strikes Back. But yeah, like we got the idea in Empire, and nothing so far in any of the canon has contradicted this. That was the first time Luke did that, and that was 3 years since the events of New Hope. So it's like, the fact that she was able to do that. It's both. On one hand, it's like, oh, it's just a funny thing because that's what they want to do in the moment, or will they actually address that and just, how powerful she is?
I'm willing to give it the benefit of the doubt and say, okay, this will be explained later. But I think for the sake of the movie, it's really cool to have Rey's arc go so quickly. But I think what's interesting is J.J. Abrams is a very, he's a very frenetic, very quick filmmaker. He doesn't waste a lot of screen time, and I think if you go back to just the style of filmmaking in the 70s, it did take its time a lot more with these scenes. And so I think, upon repeat viewings, because we've all only seen it once so far, we're going to glean a lot more
change quickly
from the movie. Yes. But I do think the first time I saw it, some of the beats maybe I missed or I felt were really skimmed over just for the sake of keeping the story going at this quick pace.
This is kind of an aside, but they're going to have a real hard time keeping certain things secret and not showing footage if Luke is a heavy part of the new movie. I mean, we know he's going to be, but
Episode 8.
Yeah, you're going to start, Episode 8. You're going to start thinking you're going to be able to piece those things together if they show too much footage of him in the trailers for that. Which is weird because it's like you're gonna then keep him out of marketing materials, or they'll just have to be general.
I think they'll embrace him being a part of the marketing, but of course they can still be selective on.
Well, I thought what was interesting is that J.J. Abrams said that the thing that got him hooked to the idea of doing Episode 6 is the question of who is Luke Skywalker.
Right.
And because of that, I expected us to at least get something of that in this movie, and by the end we still don't know who he is, and that's okay. But in terms of this being its own movie, which is what I thought was the goal, I thought having such a big cliffhanger ending where Luke is basically the item, that the MacGuffin that we're after this entire story, not have any sort of real resolution was a little bit of a strange note. But though it did leave me really excited to see, okay, now that you've done all the nostalgia stuff, now that you've established everything. Where are we going that's different? What are we doing that's different? Let's have a weird Episode 8.
Right.
Well, I mean, it's similar to, I guess, what JJ did with Star Trek, in that he's like, I have all this stuff that I have to deal with, and I have to get through this thing and take it to a good place so I can tell more stories. Now, I don't think, we don't even need to draw connections between Episode 8 and Star Trek Into Darkness. I don't think it's going to follow that path. But,
and it's Rian Johnson directing it.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
It is. And they've been working together on story for a long time.
Yeah.
And so obviously it's going to work in that world. It's going to continue on. To me, a cliffhanger did not bother me at all. I knew I was going to get a cliffhanger. I thought it was going to be something pretty major. But
But it's interesting because that ending, I should say, because I do think the movie to a fault is emulating the others, especially New Hope. But the end doesn't. It's not like Phantom Menace, which also had a big celebration with everyone standing on stage.
Yeah.
It goes in a very different direction, and is the first of the 3 trilogies now to have the first movie end on a cliffhanger. Yeah, Phantom Menace has the who was the master, who was apprentice, but not as big as this. This is a mid-scene cutting off. But that does make me even more excited about what's next, because I don't think they're going to be as nostalgia driven. This movie was so important as far as relaunching the brand and relaunching Star Wars. I think we're going to go in I don't expect the next movie, except that it probably will be the second one's darker, but I don't think it'll feel like Empire Strikes Back as far as hitting the beats as hard.
Well, we get to see Luke as a Jedi Master, right? Like that's going to be the story, essentially, of Episode 8.
Why is he at the Jedi
It's going
Temple?
to be the treat of Episode 8, you know, and the Jedi Temple and all that stuff is just, like, we're going to get a lot of lore that we haven't gotten before, we've gotten in the EU, but not like, now this is canon, so we're going to get all kinds of new stuff.
Let's talk about Snoke, though. We'll get into the questions we have about him, but did he work for you?
He was a little weird to me because he was sort of nebulous, and at a glance it was like, oh, he's pretty Palpatine-y, hologram guy, bald, kind of disfigured.
Palpatine meets Gollum.
Yeah.
Meets something from The Hobbit.
Yeah, so in this movie he made no impression on me, very sort of ethereal, but certainly, again, raises huge questions. Who is he? Where's he from? Where does he have this
big?
Yeah, is he tiny? Is he giant? Or is he a normal-sized dude? Where does his knowledge base come from? He can't just be some random guy, right? He's got to have some connection to something that even gives him this knowledge. The character, I wasn't like, ooh, cool. I just was like, okay, well, what's his deal?
Well, the tease for him was a bit like much for me. Like the marketing tease was like, oh, the physicality of him could not be reflected by not doing mocap, and it's like, you could have very easily
could have been
put makeup, I think.
But what we saw in this movie could have been done with a guy,
But
We'll
he just
see what it
he
is.
looked like he looked like a mashup of like Voldemort and Gollum or something like that to me, with a huge I don't know, gash in his head, whatever that is.
Yeah, I thought he felt a little like stereotypical, like Marvel villainy, like sci-fi villainy, like what we've seen. I can't even think of an immediate example, but like he felt sort of stereotypical in what we have come to establish as like evil creatures. But I want to give this the benefit of the doubt and say we could get something really cool.
Yeah.
Before we move on from
we know one thing: he's a total egomaniac.
Yes, he is.
It's like, not only am I going to have an entire temple, that is dedicated to my holographic image, it's going to be like the friggin' Lincoln Memorial.
Snoke loves Snoke, man.
I thought it was interesting Maz had like a statue of herself over her like
I know.
pirate base too, but I was okay
I honestly thought that was a story thing. I think they were like, don't forget, this is Maz's place.
Right.
This is a big deal.
Yeah, they had some
But
interesting visual cues.
That was kind of weird. I was like, I don't know that this woman would erect a statue to herself.
You had a bit of a Chewie issue in one particular scene, though. I know you wanted to bring up.
Oh, yeah, it was funny because Scott Clora brought it up too. Just a weird beat, which is simply when Chewie, when they return after the, spoiler alert, after Han's death, they just do a very strange, it's a staging thing. It's because he literally walks by Leia. So it's like the two characters who should be the most, and they are separately the most wrecked by Han's death, don't even look at each other. They don't hug each other. There's just this weird non-beat between them. And it felt kind of weird because it's like they wanted the Leia and Rey thing to happen,
which is also
weird, but it was at the expense of Chewbacca, who's literally in the scene and walks by. So it just felt very strange. I was like, maybe Wookiees grieve differently, and she knows that, and she's like, I need to give him, I need to give him his, because they had a great moment earlier when they hugged, when Han and her were so uneasy, and then Chewbacca goes up and hugs her. So that was just really strange. It was like, Chewie, Leia, deal with this.
It's funny because we've all only seen this once at this point, so it's really tough sometimes to talk about a movie in this much depth when you've seen it one time. But it's funny what people pick up on. The excitement of this movie, there are details that people are like, can you believe it when this happened? And I was like, I don't know that I saw it. I don't know that I even remember them hugging, That's kind of how it is, like you're sort of racing to put it all together in your mind.